The following is our first ever interview on the Wild World podcast, and it's something we're planning to do more of as time goes on. We are very grateful to Sharktoz for being kind enough to lend us some of his time, and I really enjoyed our conversation. I think you will easily be able to tell from this interview that Sharktoz is a very well-spoken, intelligent, and kind man. I think our first attempt at an interview went pretty well, though I do regret not making it clearer how to find our distinguished guest online. Sharktoz can be found on DeviantART, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and of course, YouTube. You can find him fairly easily just by typing Sharktoz, that's Shark, T-O-Z, all one word, into any of these websites. But for your convenience, we will have links below the YouTube video. And if you are listening to the MP3, all the relevant links should be in the show notes. Without any further ado, I hope you enjoy our first interview. Hey, hello, and welcome to the Wild World podcast. I'm your host, Thomas, from the Wild World YouTube channel. And I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mika.
Hi. So today we're going to do something a little different. We wanted to start interviewing other wildlife enthusiasts and experts, so today will be our first interview episode.
Yeah, we are joined by an incredible YouTuber, creator of some of the best, if not the best, and most accurate shark content on YouTube, a man who fights the tide of misinformation, Mr. Sharktoz. How are you today?
Putting a lot of pressure on me with that intro, man. No, I'm good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you here. So I guess since this is a new thing for the listeners, this is going to be more of a, casual conversation / interview. We've got some questions for him. He's got some questions for us, and I guess we'll just see where it goes.
Yeah. I guess the first question I want to ask people, I think I might know the answer already, but just what's your favorite animal?
Take a guess.
I'm going to guess lizards.
It's a weasel.
Oh, no, is it really?
No. No, sharks have been my favorite animals since as long as I can remember. Though, admittedly, there was one point where I actually hated sharks, but that was because of how I grew up, and they always taught us, hey, love turtles, love whales, love dolphins, but sharks are the evil boogeyman of the ocean. And then as I got older, I found out that's not the case at all. And they're way more than just big fish with big teeth. So the more I learned about them, the more I learned that not only was I a lot like them, but there was more to them. And so that kind of story of perseverance really just stuck with me. But yes, my favorite animal is the shark, long story short.
So you're a restored shark hater. Like, not restored. What's the word I'm thinking of? A rehabilitated shark hater.
I was about to say, I don't hate them now. I mean,
exactly. You got over that affliction.
Well, yeah. So it's like when you're a kid, you don't know any better. And it's no insult to the kids, but you don't know what you don't know. But as you get more curious and we're in the age of the internet, you find out more things about things that you used to hate, but then you dig a little deeper and then you decipher, hold on, there's more to this than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, unfortunately, some people don't do that all the time with every animal. They kind of just learn when they're a kid it's bad or dangerous, and then they just don't really think about it again. That's just all they need to know.
Yeah.
Did you ever hate sharks? Or, sorry.
Go ahead. You're fine.
I was going to ask Thomas if he ever hated or was afraid of sharks when he was little.
No, but I did probably think they were super dangerous, but I don't know, I guess a little boy thought that was cool that they were dangerous.
And I suppose to be clear on the dangerous note, some folks always say that sometimes my argument is, hey, sharks aren't dangerous, and that's not the case. My argument has always been that sharks are less dangerous than you think. Generally speaking, as you've pointed out in many of your videos, Thomas, if you see a shark in the ocean, more than likely it's going to leave you alone. It's not going to mess with you. Whereas other animals like moose or a bear, they are far more likely to mess with you than a predator or a shark will.
Yeah. It's like sometimes I get comments like when I'm trying to defend sharks, and it's kind of like, well, if you were in the water with a shark, you'd be afraid. And like, yeah, if I was like swimming and I looked down and a great white was swimming up to me, I would be afraid. But like, I don't know, I feel like that's just like the immediate response of there's a large predator near me rather than,
Yeah, it's how we evolved. It's not an
yeah,
irrational fear. It's just,
yeah,
when we're in the ocean is the last voyage that we have really explored well because we can't, because of our limitations as humans. So being afraid of like snakes, the thing of how like treat all guns as if they're loaded or treat all snakes as if they're poisonous. Even though all snakes aren't poisonous, we told stuff like that to keep children safe.
yeah,
Tell your kid, if you see a snake, don't mess with it. Even if it's not poisonous, it's your kid.
right, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because like, why take a risk when you don't need to?
Yeah, and a
Um,
lot of people don't know a lot about sharks, so it's better safe than sorry. So I get why some people are like, if I see a shark, I'm going to be scared in the ocean. It's not an irrational fear.
right. You said your favorite animal is shark, but do you have any specific species that are your favorites?
So I can tell you my 3 and 2, but I've never told anyone what my first favorite is, and I have a specific reason for that we'll get into a bit later for a fun reason. But
Interesting.
I'd have to say my third favorite is a great white, and my second favorite is a mako. If I had to say the fourth, it'd probably be the hammerhead,
Okay.
and then the
It
fifth would probably be the oceanic white tip.
Do you have a least
nice.
favorite shark?
That implies that I don't like it. No, I'm kidding. I don't necessarily have a least favorite. It's I've got my top sharks, and then all the other sharks are kind of lumped in with the rest. But I don't
Uh-huh.
hate any of them. What about you guys? What are your favorites or least favorites, as you put it, Mika?
Um, I guess I've always been an anti-basic person. I'm always accusing Thomas of being so basic in the animals he likes. You might know that.
Yeah.
So I did make a list of some sharks that I like, and I just prefer ones that are, I guess, more obscure. So
Really?
yes. So the sharks I wrote down that I like are the wobbegong,
We'll be
just
gone.
because it's like super weird and it has all the. I mean, it looks like someone threw like a rug to the bottom of the ocean, you know? And I like the frilled shark because I had a student once. I didn't even think about sharks really, and he came up to me and he was really excited that I liked animals, and he wanted to know if I'd heard of this one shark. Um, and he said it in Japanese, so I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, kid. But then I looked it up later, and I was like, wow, this shark is really interesting. It's so scary looking. Um, and I just thought it was really cool, so that's another shark I like now. The whale shark is really big, so I like it. I think it would be really fun to swim with. And I like the kitefin shark because it has bioluminescence.
Those sharks.
Um,
Excellent. I
and I
have
also
actually.
wrote down, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead and finish.
I also wrote down the saw shark. I was just watching one of your videos and you were like, the saw shark isn't a shark. And then I was like looking up the phylogeny basically of the shark clade, and it was sort of unclear if it is a shark or not because yeah, I couldn't decide. I think it is a shark though because it's depending on how you want to split it up. So, I don't know. I just added
No.
it. You can refute that or if you want.
So there is a bit of a confusion. It's funny. Some of those that you mentioned, there's cryptids for 2 of them. So the wobbegong shark and the frilled shark. Thomas knows about them. I covered them. But there's cryptids involving those. But for the saw sharks, they're a strange group because there's saw sharks and there's saw fish. And the reason
Hmm.
why it's so confusing is because the saw fish are bigger than the saw shark. Funny enough, saw sharks can actually get massive. So that's part of the reason as to why people get confused with them. But as far as them being actual sharks, they are by technical standpoint, but the better way to look at it is they fall into the category of elasmobranchi, which includes sharks, rays, chimeras, and so on.
Yes, but I also saw they fit into chondrichthyes, which is like one level, a few levels down from elasmobranchi,
Elasmobranchi,
elasmobranchi.
yes.
Um, so yeah, I think it's a squalomorph, so it's thus included in shark groups. I saw so
It
many
is.
different family trees, so I was not sure.
Yeah, there's a very complex tree of sharks, and I actually have a picture of it on my desktop. I don't know if I'm able to actually share it or not, but
Mm.
those are some very cool ones. What about you,
Oh,
Thomas? Let me see if I can pull up this picture.
oh, but first I was gonna say the reason. I never said the reason I like the saw shark. I had a little toy of it when I was little. I just remember like it had the saw mouth, and I was like, oh, this is a very utilitarian toy because it's both a saw and a shark. I thought that was fun. Um, yeah, sorry. Go on, Thomas.
No worries. I guess I'd sort of think about it as in like what sharks I'd most like to see. If it was just like you can just pick a few and guaranteed to go see them, but then you won't get to see any others. I'd probably, to be a bit basic, I'd probably have to put the great white on there because it's like the quintessential shark. Like say tell someone think of a shark, they'll probably think of a great white, is my guess. Um, but I also like I guess I'm biased from like the recent video, but I do like the deep sea sharks, the sleeper sharks, goblin shark, frill shark. I also really like the sand tiger sharks. I just like their sort of chill nature. They seem like so relaxed or something.
If
Um,
if you want a shark to go swim with to convince people that sharks aren't like Jaws of the bloodthirsty killers, I highly recommend to both of you go swimming with sand tiger sharks. They're some of the chillest sharks you could ever swim with. They'll literally just kind of drift right past you and look at you, and they'll just keep going.
yeah, it really shows like that you can't judge something or an animal by the way it looks because I feel like a part of the reason they use them a lot in aquariums is because they have the like it's big, it has big teeth. It's what maybe some people in the population want to see when they want to see a shark. But then it's like, actually, have there been? You might know this. Has there ever been a recorded attack from one of them?
There have been attacks, but no fatalities.
No fatalities. Yeah,
Yes, it's in a long list of sharks that have never killed a human. Like, for
yeah,
example, hammerheads have never killed a human. If you watch Shark Week, you wouldn't think that. But no, they haven't.
no, yeah. So I guess those are some of the top ones that come to mind right now. I feel like it's always kind of fluctuates though. It's like whatever one I'm like reading into or researching ends up becoming my favorite.
Oh, yeah, I get it. Let me see if I can share a screen of mine. I don't know if I'm able to share this. Are you guys able to see this?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is why it's very confusing, Mika. This is the tree of sharks. Here, over in this right, this is where your saw shark is. But you can
Hmm.
see how complicated it is and why it can be confusing for some people.
Yeah, it just depends on where you split the branches and what features you're looking for. And it's also a bit different than the one I was looking at, like because the saw shark was closer and grouped with the other sharks, whereas in this one it looks like it's grouped in with the rays. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're always getting new data, but I definitely see your point with that. So let me see this. And Thomas, if you want, I can send you that picture in case you need to use it for another video at some point.
Sure. I might even put it in the when I upload the podcast. I might put it in as a visual just so people can
Do you know
see.
if that's the most recent phylogeny? Because the one I was looking at, like I said, it was different, and maybe we should share both if they're equally accepted, or maybe we should share the most recent one.
I'd have to double check because I actually don't know when this one was uploaded. Yours
Okay.
might be the most recent one.
I don't know. I don't even remember where I found it. I'd have to go
Yeah,
back in my history.
no worries. I was mainly just looking for one that like kind of captured everything all together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the big reasons why I liked that one. But no, it's a very very complicated thing. But One thing that kind of segues into one thing I wanted to bring up that a lot of people don't realize is you'll often hear like, hey, sharks are top predators in the ecosystem, when in reality, I was actually reading this book called Sharkpedia, and it brought up that most sharks are actually mid-tier predators. Now, of course, you have like great whites, tigers, makos. Those are top predators. But most of the other sharks are mid-tier predators. And a big reason as to why that is the most represented group is the cat sharks and the dogfish. And I'm actually preparing a video on those, along with kind of a case study. Technically, that's peak shark right there because they have the biggest and most represented group. I say that as a joke, but most sharks are actually
Yeah.
like mid-tier predators. Now, to be clear, that doesn't make the role of a shark any less valuable because sharks are opportunistic. So even if they're not at the top, if a shark is swimming in a reef, the fish still have to be on guard. Because even if the shark isn't hunting at the moment, if it sees an opportunity, it'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That sort of reminds me a few years ago. Might have actually been before I even uploaded the first video. I planned this ambitious idea for a video. I was gonna like do a fact on every shark. So, and I think I had at the time the recognized amount of species was like 520 or something. I probably
Yeah.
got to like 20 something and then gave up. But well, maybe a little bit further. But I remember it was just like so many was just like the cat sharks and the like dogfish over and over and over again.
You could just do it by family or genus or something.
Yeah, it'd have to be a bit different because and there's so many where it's like we caught one once and it was small and that's like all we know.
Yeah, that is often the case. But again, I guess this can kind of segue into what you guys talked about and what I recently uploaded about is now we got to take into account, hey, do these sharks have lineages like the great whites do? Which even that
Mm.
surprised me. I didn't even know that. After I read that paper, that even surprised me.
Yeah, same. I guess it sort of makes sense when like they're so spread out all over the globe, but I guess it's surprising because you think they'd easily enough like interact or interbreed at like certain hotspots or something, but I guess not.
What I, and this is just my theory, I don't know if this is
Yeah.
actually the case, but all the continents that we had, they were shifting over time. Like, we had Pangea, and then now we have the continents that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
What I imagine happened is that all the different lineages were like in different sections, and then at one point there was a barrier that didn't let them get to other lineages, so they eventually just stayed in their lane, for lack of a better term. And then as the continent shifted, sharks don't know like what land is. All they know is that, oh, I can't swim any further than this. So even
Yeah.
though the land shifted, they don't know that. And while 200,000 years isn't that long of a time on the evolutionary scale, it's still long enough for them. So maybe with the migration patterns, maybe every now and then they seldom breed. They'd be like, hey, close enough, one of those. But at least that's my theory as to what happened. It's just there were barriers and obstacles and probably perhaps some, let me make sure I word this right, little changes that were going on at the time that resulted in different lineages, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think you brought up a good point as well. You kind of alluded to it there and in your video that like it seems like if more studies are done, we will probably find this in other species as well. If
I
because
agree.
if the reasons are like you were saying about the different continents, and I think in the paper it was saying about like water levels and currents. If that was able to separate great whites, surely it was able to separate other cosmopolitan shark species too. Or I'd imagine, or I guess.
Yeah, I definitely say that's within the realm of reason.
Mm. Cool stuff.
Um, Thomas, did you want to ask your first
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of bounce
questions?
back and forth through
Yeah.
which different questions. Well, actually, can I ask a follow-up? You said that you originally hated sharks, right? When you were a
Yes.
kid.
Yes.
Do you remember like the first shark show or media or book that made you think that? Or I mean, it's probably
Jaws.
a long time ago. It's Jaws,
It's
yeah.
basic, but I mean it's true. It was Jaws. I saw that,
Yeah.
and I saw all four of them. Now it's just like these things are evil. They're out to get us. I step a toe in the water, and I'm gonna lose a toe to a shark, because even though it's my bathtub, he's just gonna be right under the surface, and I'm gonna lose my
Yeah.
toe.
There is a movie where that happens. The shark can manifest in any body of water, no matter how small. But it's a ghost shark.
Yeah,
So,
there's an SCP like that too. I don't know if you guys know what SCPs are.
Um,
Secure,
SCP.
contain, protect. It's basically a bunch of these writers basically create these anomalous stories about basically cryptids. They're made up cryptids that people make. Like, imagine if there was a giant lobster that was the size of an island that has been sleeping in our oceans, and it's like multiple miles upon miles long, but it's sleeping at the bottom of the ocean. Or
Mm.
a ship that randomly appears during a storm that kidnaps other ships and pulls crew onto it, and then it recruits them as like to be eternally bound to that ship, but it only appears in storms.
Okay.
Just like really weird stuff like that, and some rather creepy stuff, if I'm being honest. But they're all
And is
made
the
up.
yeah, is the idea you said secure, contain, protect? Is this like this is the organization that's trying to take care of
Yes,
it?
yes, it's
Okay.
called the SCP Foundation. So the story behind them, the long and short of it, it's way deeper than this, but it's a foundation that protects and secures different anomalies that happen throughout the planet, so the public doesn't find out about them. They're literally made up cryptids, but like turned up to 500. Like there are
That
some
sounds
like
kind of cool.
reality bender SCPs.
Sounds like a good idea for a TV show, maybe like an anthology or something.
Some people actually have. Like a basic one you can start with is SCP-3000, which is known as, I think if I'd say it right, Anantashesha, which is basically a giant moray eel that sits at the bottom of the ocean and devours humans not by eating them, but it devours their consciousness internally by secreting this liquid from its body. But it's an eel that's multiple miles long, and it just sits at the bottom of the ocean.
Wow.
You guys might get a kick out of it.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Sounds a bit trippy as well.
It is very. I've watched some of them, and some of them are just like, sheesh, I can't go to sleep listening to this.
Uh, that's cool. I'll definitely look it up afterwards.
I'll
Can
send you
I?
a few links after this.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. Um, can I ask what made you want to get into making YouTube videos? Do you remember?
Yes. So for me, I wasn't seeing good shark content, if I'm being honest, out there for the longest time. And it really started like this is around the time when Shark Week was started to go downhill. You saw the fake mockumentary with Megalodon. Then I saw more
Mm-hmm.
YouTube videos of folks. Everyone saying Megalodon's alive, or whenever someone was making a video about sharks, be like, let's talk about the tiger or the great white. It was always the same thing. It's this big. It has this many attacks. It has these senses. And it's all the same stuff. Still making them look like monsters. And I just wasn't seeing the shark content I wanted to see. So I said, fine, I'll do it myself on some Thanos stuff. And so I was like, let me see if I can find some good stuff. And funny enough, that's actually when I started running into your videos, Thomas. And I was just like, this guy knows what he's doing for sharks. Your How Big videos. And that's when I I started commenting on all yours. I was just like, finally, somebody else is doing sharks justice. And again, that's still why I like your videos to this day.
Well, thank you very much. I do remember. I think it was the orca and great white video. You commented on that, and you were like, I think you were talking about how like you'd come up with something similar because you had made a video previous. I was like, oh, someone actually has made a video about this before, and that's when I first stumbled upon your channel.
Yeah, it was about, and it was kind of, it seemed like I made it a bigger deal than it actually was, with
Yeah,
at
me
least with
too.
the title of it. But it was just, there was a great white that happened to escape orcas. And
Yeah.
folks are like, oh my God, a shark escaped. And it's like, yeah, No animal on the face of the planet has a 100% success rate. So obviously there are going to be sharks that get away. That's really the ultimate point of it. Unless you're a dragonfly.
Yeah.
Dragonflies are freaks.
But dragonflies and... Did you say dragonflies?
Dragonflies have a 97% success rate.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I was getting away or catching food?
Catching food. Like they have a
Oh,
97% success rate. Like if you do some research on dragonflies, you'll find out they're actually like, they're one mutation away from taking over the world.
Wow. So they're like the most successful predator in a sense?
The literal most successful predator in the world.
Wow.
They are more successful
cool.
than sharks.
Yeah.
And there's also the cat. What is it? Is it the African golden cat or
African
the
wild
sand
dog?
cat? No, it's a type of cat that is very, very successful. Gets like 97% of everything it hunts, some number like that.
I'm not too familiar with cats. You may have to ask Calvin about that one.
Yeah,
we'll have him on in a few weeks.
So it's a cat that is very small, but it's the best predator. I've always
I think that's a sand
heard
cat.
that it's...
I think I remember reading that.
But they always say it's the best predator. But I've also heard the dragonflies are the best predator, so maybe they mean the best mammalian predator? I don't really know.
Let me write that down, sand cat. I'm gonna have to look that up. Not that I don't believe you, it's just that's interesting. Because I haven't heard of the sand cat.
Fact check, Liva.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need a moderator who can fact check everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I did have something I wanted to ask the both of you.
Mainly,
what upcoming projects do both of you have? I imagine you have a couple of videos in the iron, Thomas. But what about you as well, Mika?
What do you mean by projects exactly?
Like videos or anything or whatever.
Well,
I don't make
videos. Thomas does that. I
don't know if you wanted to like announce this, but we sort of kind of have plans of doing maybe more videos on this channel, like the React kind of ones.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll do some like Wild World podcast reacts to movies type thing.
Yeah. You don't have to say anything if it's something that you're still kind of like ironing out.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have just kind of an idea that it might be fun to react to wildlife movies.
Yeah.
Give our take. Maybe you can be a special guest for the Jaws episode.
Oh man.
And then I guess
I find it hard to watch a lot of shark movies or mainstream media just because like I have to keep pausing it because I have to keep correcting everything. Like I've gotten to the point where like I can't watch Shark Week. I have to dedicate like 3 hours to get through one episode of Shark Week because I get angry at it. I do. And I don't get angry usually.
How do you feel about is it Shark Fest, the Nat Geo one?
Yes.
Do you feel any better at that, or do you think it's kind of the same thing?
Shark Fest, if Shark Week was a 3 out of 10, Shark Fest is a 4.5. It has the potential to be great because I've watched one or two of their shows that show promise. Like there was one they were doing about hammerheads, and it just focused on them. They were showing like, here's where we're going. They showed just the normal footage, no edited footage of them swimming with the sharks. They have potential, but then they have the ridiculous ones, of course. Ones where they have to hype things up. Megalodon versus Leviathan, which is a ridiculous argument if you ask me. But more on that later. But
people love that. People love that argument.
If Shark Fest decided to go in the route of old school Shark Week, I don't know if I sent you the link, but there's a YouTube channel called Classic Shark Week where they showed a lot of the old stuff. Like that's all people want. Just get back to just talking about sharks. We don't need sensationalism. We don't care that Jason Momoa is on there. We just want to learn about sharks. Like them covering like, hey, let's dig a little deeper into these new lineages of great whites. Like there's questions people want to ask. Like what are the differences between them? If it's on this genetic level, does one grow bigger than the other? Do orcas target a specific lineage? Do they know that it's a specific lineage? How deep do they go? Do all of them have different nursing grounds, or do they meet up? When they do interbreed, where is it that they interbred at? And is that a location that needs to be protected? Stuff like that. Those are questions people are going to want to know. But no, we want to watch people at Jackass make fools of themselves.
Yeah, I feel like that's. I don't know what's worse, that or Megalodon, but because at least with Megalodon, there's not like real sharks being almost abused. But I guess it's a lot of misinformation.
It is.
I hate. Yeah, I just hate the, like where they're like jumping on top of a great white as a prank, like.
And then they get surprised when something happens. Like they're jumping in the water with a bunch of bait. Like the one time when somebody actually like got his hand bitten, and they were like surprised. They're like, "Oh crap, something actually happened!" And I'm sitting here like screaming at my screen, like, "What'd you think was gonna happen, idiot?"
Yeah, and if that had gone worse, like the headlines are gonna be like,
Exactly.
the evil shark killed I don't know, but it's gonna be sensationalized. Like these people try to make a documentary and they got killed by a killer shark.
See, that's the going on to the tangent of Megalodon. That has always been my biggest thing. And for the record, Megalodon is dead. For those of you naysayers, like I don't care what you say in the comments, Megalodon's dead. But let's say for the sake of argument, Megalodon was alive. Now what? I don't know if you saw the part where I said, "Hey, look, here's the reality of what happens if Megalodon's actually alive. There's going to be 3 groups of people that interact with him. 1, the scientists, which makes sense. It's a Megalodon. Let's figure out what makes this animal tick. 2 are the clout chasers. People just doing downright irresponsible and dumb stuff. Like if you've been on Twitter and you've seen the stuff people do, you lose faith in humanity. Like you think people can't get worse, but they just do with it. And 3 is going to be the trophy hunters, because somebody wants the title of, I killed the last Megalodon, or I hunted this really big shark. But somewhere in those scenarios, somebody's going to get hurt. And then the headlines are going to go crazy. And then all of a sudden, we have to kill the shark that everyone wanted to prove was alive. And guess what? We killed it. Now it's not alive. How do you guys feel about that now?
Yeah.
Sorry for the tangent. That gets me heated.
No, you're right. And it's like as well, if it did exist like closer to our timeline, I feel like by now it might be extinct just because we would have like hunted it to extinction.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so, funny phenomenon. Megalodon doesn't have a casual name. Like you notice, we don't call it the great white shark, Carcharodon carcharodon. We call it the great white. Otodus megalodon is its scientific name, but it doesn't have like a casual name like other sharks.
Yeah.
I always found
I
that
guess
odd.
the Meg, but that's I don't know.
Still the scientific name. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I hope we're not leaving you out, Mika.
No, I mean, it's all right.
She firmly believes in Megalodon still alive, so she's been quiet
I'm
and
offended
angry.
Because I'm a big Meg believer.
Sharktoz,
And
have
a
you
big
explored
trophy
the
hunter as
entire
well.
ocean?
I have actually explored the entire ocean. I've spoken with all the sharks in the ocean. They told me Megalodon died a long time ago.
Okay. Good answer.
He doesn't come around here anymore. That's what they say.
I think Mika and I
guess-
would be getting into shark arguments all the time.
I guess that's a good segue into another topic that I wanted to cover, which is how do you feel about the field of cryptozoology?
So I like the field of cryptozoology. But one thing I often say is everything is explained through evolution. And while I find some claims are rather ridiculous, but when someone brings up a cryptid to me, I kind of, like in a recent video, I broke down how I kind of approach them. I asked questions like, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, this animal does exist. Where in the food chain does it fit? Why did it evolve that way? How did it evolve that way? What ecological niches would it fill? Things like that. And is it plausible? But if someone just says, oh, this is just a cryptid that just sits in the forest and just hunts humans all day, it's like, that makes things less believable. But if there's like, hey, here's an animal that because this environment changed over time, this animal evolved to be this way, but there isn't that many of them, but they believe it's a cryptid and it evolved a certain way, I find that more believable.
Hmm.
And as you've seen with my most recent cryptid video, it turns out there are some that do exist, like the goblin shark. They get way bigger than we initially thought. So I was like, okay. For me, the only attachment is to the truth as far as cryptids go.
Okay. So do you have a favorite cryptid? Like, that you like learning about or thinking about?
Funny enough, probably Nessie.
Okay.
And it's
Really?
mainly because of that Steve Alton book that I showed you that one time in the message.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, hey, Nessie isn't a plesiosaur, it's a giant moray eel. I always found that interesting. Steve Alton writes some pretty good books, including on Meg, though now I don't like him as much. But I'd have to say, yeah, it was probably Nessie. That's why I really enjoyed your Nessie video. I can tell you put a lot of work into that one.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you liked it.
You say how long were you writing the script for that video?
I don't know. I started it like probably a couple of years ago and then dropped it
Jesus.
for a while.
Holy
Yeah,
smokes.
I wasn't doing consistently for years, but for
Man.
a while.
Well, hey, good on you. It's easily the best one I've seen on Nessie out there.
Thanks. It's too kind. I'm kind of surprised you said Nessie. I don't know why.
It's just, there's a lot more lore behind Nessie. And it's not going to be Megalodon because Megalodon's dead.
Right. It's Megalogon.
Exactly, Megalodon. I'm stealing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me think. You wanted to ask us about cryptids as well? Is that true?
Yes. So there were two things specifically that I wanted to ask. So, if you guys could design a cryptid, what would it be? Like, you could just make up your own cryptid.
So I did read that question and I designed a cryptid. Did you, Thomas? Or are you just gonna do it on the fly?
I sort of thought about one a little bit.
Oh. So
Did you draw one?
No, I designed it like as a
Oh,
concept.
okay. Yeah.
My ideal cryptid that I would hope become something after I say this. I want it to fly and swim because those are like the two best forms of locomotion.
Of course.
I think it needs to have a valid reason why no one has ever seen it before, and that reason is that it can camouflage very well. Okay? And it's attracted to large things in the ocean and the sky. This can explain, like, you have to have something that explains something when you have a cryptid, I think. So it'll explain disappearances and crashes of ships and planes. Because it's like, oh, what's that? And then it just swats it out of the sky or gets a hole in it in the water or whatever. If you see it but you survive, you lose some sanity and you're not able to fully describe it. So that can explain why no one's ever described it. And it also could explain Chinese dragons and sea monsters because it's something that's sort of like undulating and it can be seen in the sky or in the water. So that would be my ideal cryptid. It might be something that's already been proposed, but...
So the Indominus Rex with wings.
Well, the Chinese dragon doesn't have wings. So it would be
True.
like, it just somehow, it's like a flying snake. Like, it can locomote. I don't know how it does it. And it's in the
There's
water
helium
and then it's in the
inside it.
sky. Right, and I guess it has to have some sort of, maybe sort of like a millipede action, but with wings that are so tiny that they don't look like wings. And it's just like...
Funny enough, I actually drew this creature I called Blind Dragon, and it's like a big dragon, but it's kind of like a snake. Let me see if I can pull up one of my old drawings of it. Let me see. But I drew this long time ago.
Okay.
I think
It's pretty cool.
it's
That's
called
pretty
Blind
scary.
Dragon. I need to redraw it.
Does it have eyes?
It doesn't. It's called Blind Dragon. So,
Oh, right.
have any of you seen Ben 10?
No.
Maybe
The
a
show
long
Ben
time
10.
ago. I don't really remember it though.
Do you remember the orange one that kind of had those gills on the side that like detected things around it? Orange one?
Vaguely.
That was kind of like a dog.
Yeah.
That's basically what these things do. They detect stuff around it, and that's kind of how it goes about. But it sleeps in mountains, and it's massive.
That's
I
pretty
guess that's
cool.
the cousin to my cryptid.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Do you guys like my idea? It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. What
Yeah. I
about
don't
you? Are
know
you
what.
still cooking yours a little bit?
Yeah, I don't have too much. I was also just going to say something huge, but maybe somehow could stay on land. Maybe it lives underground and comes out every now and then. I
Like a
just,
giant Sicilian.
yeah, maybe. Or, well, I don't know. I'm basically just thinking of some kind of underground kaiju, but I just really like the idea of something huge approaching in the distance. There's just like when I was a kid, whenever I heard like thunder, I always thought it sounded like something massive was coming towards me, which was like
Mm.
scary but also kind of exciting. So something like that.
I had an
Oh,
experience like that recently driving back home from visiting friends at night. And I live right now in a rural area where there are a lot of wind turbines. And I don't know if you know this, but at night they blink in synchronization. They blink red. And I was listening to this like sort of creepy bagpipe music. Um, and the setting was so creepy because it was totally dark, no street lights, and all the blinking red lights. And then I just thought, imagine if those red lights, like what if you saw two lights and instead of blinking and staying far away, they get closer and closer, and then like suddenly you realize there's this huge thing in the middle of the road. I kept thinking
Mm,
about that and I was driving and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna scare myself so much that I crash my own car, you know? But I
you
am
yeah.
scared of that idea of something large approaching from the
Yeah, there's just
distance in the
something
night.
like really like scary slash humbling about just being dwarfed by something super massive.
what you might
Yeah.
like, Thomas, is I've again something else to show. I created this thing called Tyrannosaurus ricari. So imagine a T Rex, but this thing is like the size of a mountain, and it has lightning powers, and basically wherever it goes, it drags a superstorm with it. In the storm, because of it, the weather is so dark and black that you can barely see it. But at the center of the storm, this thing always exists, and it's like the
Mm.
size of a mountain, and just drags a superstorm with it wherever it goes.
That is the coolest thing I have heard yeah, today.
It's got a whole
That
story
is
with it.
awesome.
So I
Bro, I need
actually
to like read more through your DeviantArt. You have so much cool stuff here.
so that's I actually kind of segues into something I wanted to ask you guys about because I was thinking about trying this on the channel, and I guess I could tell it on this here podcast or something. Because so you've seen the different stories of sharks and creatures that I have. I was thinking
Mm.
about doing some short stories on my YouTube channel where I go over these Dr. K encounters. And who Dr. K is basically like similar to SCPs. He goes through these encounters of like encountering the different sharks and creatures that I have created. Like Vanta, for example, when you're checking out Vanta, the great black shark. That story that I put in his description is told from his perspective, where him and his colleagues encounter the shark in the very big deep. And I would just draw more kind of like a comic and voice him and put it on my channel, just to kind of mix things up a little bit.
I really like that idea. I'd love to see that. Yeah, I really like the stories of it's like deep sea giants.
Yeah, you'll
Uh,
like SCPs. And yes, I can look into doing one for yours, Mika.
Okay, sounds good.
I'd have to know more about it, but I mean, we can hash that out at some other point.
Okay, yeah, just ask me whatever. I mean, I invented it, so I know everything about it, and no one
Exactly.
else does.
I'm wait, let me see. I
But no,
is
those were my cryptic
Tyrannosaurus
questions for you guys.
rakurai? Is that it?
Raikari, which is Japanese for lightning. So its scientific name would be tyrant lizard lightning.
That's very cool. And oh, Dr. K is in this one as well. So it's Dr. K isn't just shark related. It's like all the creatures
Yes,
he
he's a
investigates.
universal scientist that goes around, and his official title is Explorer of Worlds and Seeker of Knowledge for the sake of knowledge itself. And he
Cool.
seeks encounters of these different sharks and creatures that I created. just in kind of instead of just being like, hey, here's the animal, it's this big, it does this, etc. It's better if it's told from a story, and that's also kind of like why I like SCPs so much, because instead of just saying like, here's what the SCP is, they're told from a story perspective. Like, you might like the story of the Scarlet King. He's another SCP, SCP-1. You guys might like him. But like I said, after this, I'll send a few of them to you, Thomas. Give it a look.
That mildly reminds me of I had this idea, I don't know if I'll ever do it, where sometimes I put up on the channel like guess what the next video is, and sometimes people say things like, oh, the man-eating dinosaur attacks of 1935 or something. I was just like, what if I just made something up like April Fool's Day and like tried to tell a man-eater story as if it was like one of those cryptid dinosaurs, like the Casairex, I think.
Kazarek? I think.
Something like
I
that.
can't remember the name.
But then it's also kind of hypocritical because I've gone in so hard on like all those mockumentaries on Discovery.
But see, that's where I like SCPs, and like if you make your own cryptid, that's why I was asking you guys earlier. If you make your own, you can tell your own story about it. And since you've done cryptids so much and you've done so much research, you can go like, hey, here's how these people tried to tackle and find what this cryptid was about, and you can tell it like a story. But I'm telling you, Nat Geo Wild better watch it with your style of doing videos, Thomas.
You're too kind, man. No, Nat Geo Wild needs to watch it with your style of videos, because I remember I watched, speaking of Shark Fest, like looking for the world's biggest bull shark. I was like 45 minutes long, and it was okay, but like there was a lot of like stock footage of are they getting closer to shore, and then just showing them eating a fish or bait with like dramatic music, and I was like, this is okay, but kind of boring. I wish they just get to the part where they measure the shark. And then I watched your video, like the interview with White Shark Video, and it was like 10 minutes long and had about 10 times the amount of information. I was like, why aren't the documentaries like this?
Yeah, and you even made one on bull sharks, and yours was like, it was quick and to the point. Hey, here's the largest one we got. We got proof. It was quick and to the point. And I appreciated it.
So let's see. We could pivot, I guess, out of cryptids if you want, and we could talk about, basically we like to talk about wildlife trips and like things you'd like to see in the wild. So and experiences you might have had. So like, have you ever had a really interesting wildlife experience yourself?
Yes. So, funny enough, you said one of your favorite animals is the whale shark.
One of my favorite sharks.
Sharks,
Yeah.
yes. So, at the Georgia Aquarium, you can swim with the whale sharks there, and I've done that.
Okay.
Oh,
And
wow.
I can tell you this. The ones in the Georgia Aquarium, they're nowhere near as big as the ones in the wild. But let me tell you this now. Whale sharks are some of the sneakiest fish you will ever see because they're silent. There would be times I'd be looking at one of the hammerhead sharks right there, and I'd be looking at him. I saw one of the other whale sharks swimming to my left. I was like, okay, I know he's there. And then as I'm looking at him, I look below, and one of the other ones is directly below me, and I didn't hear him. And this other
Pretty
one,
cool.
a very similar one, is a buddy of mine. He was diving in the ocean. He was filming something. And this guy was a bit taller than me. I'm like 6 feet, and he was like 6'7", big guy. But he was diving. And normally he like towers over folks, and he was like filming something in the water. And then like again with the silent part, he turned to his left, and there was just this whale swimming right next to him, kind of just like looking at him. And he's like, I've never felt so small in my life, because when you watch a video of something, you know they're big.
Yeah.
And then you see one in real life, and you're like, oh, that's what people mean when they say they're big. Like moose. Most people, if they haven't seen it, they don't understand how big a moose is. Like, that thing's bigger than your car.
Yeah, it's like you said, you always know they're big. I've never seen a moose in the wild, but like in a natural history museum. Even though everyone keeps telling me they're gigantic, they're huge. Like, yeah, I get it. And then you see one, you're like, oh wow.
Yeah. You know it's big until you have to face the reality of the moose.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a moose in the wild yourself?
I haven't, but some of my friends have shown me their pictures of it, like walking next to their car, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
that thing's, how is that thing that legally shouldn't be allowed to exist for how big that thing is. And they're not afraid of us either.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the whole thing where it's like, if you're driving, if you see a deer on the road, don't swerve, just hit it, just because it'll cause more damage if you swerve. The moose is the one exception to the rule. If you see a moose, swerve, don't hit it, because that thing will
Yeah.
squish your car.
Is that not also true of bears, though? Like, if there was a grizzly bear in the road, shouldn't I not hit it?
I don't know. I'll be
I
honest, I
feel
don't.
like, yeah, because, I mean, moose are really big, but I would also feel like a bear would destroy my car. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's
It
just like,
probably would, but I'm not as well studied on bears as I am with
Mm.
other animals. But funny enough, like grizzly bears, like the really big bears, they actually, like, some of them take out mooses. Now, mind you, this is like the biggest of the big bears, and they take out smaller moose.
Mhm.
it's an interesting thing because you like talking about animal behavior and the debates that people have. There's probably a debate about that as well, but like I've seen videos of grizzlies chasing moose and I've seen videos of moose chasing grizzlies. So it's like I don't know. I feel like if I said one or the other, people would get very upset. But it seems
Yes,
like both really do happen.
and this is the reason why, if I can stroke your ego just a little more, why I liked your lion versus tiger video, because you pointed out something that a lot of people don't realize, which is nature isn't like some movie. Rarely do animals fight. And when it is a fight, rarely is it determined by species. It's more based on the individual, especially at the end where you were going over all the cases. Like, even with sharks versus dolphins, even though most of the time, most of the dolphins lose, if it's like a shark that isn't that good at hunting and a pissed off dolphin, guess who's going to win?
Mm.
But generally
Yeah.
speaking, if it's not predation, dolphins and sharks leave each other alone.
Yeah. I think most people don't really think about that. They just think they're like natural enemies that constantly go to war.
You know, the thing about war is it costs lives, and animals aren't too keen on that.
Yeah. There's also really great videos from the Stroke Your Ego a little bit too. But I loved how you did like the dolphins or whales protecting humans. Because I'd actually heard that for years and I just didn't think about it. I was like, oh, okay. I guess that happens. And they were just like, maybe they were just in the ocean together and they swam past them and the humans interpreted it a certain way. And there's like, oh, wait, yeah, that makes way more sense.
Yeah, they don't. Because humans aren't in the ocean enough for the dolphins to, one, register. It's like, okay, this is something that I have to save. Like, this is something that you
Yeah.
may make an idea out of for a video. It's like, humpback whales will protect animals from orcas. But that's because humpback whales know that orcas are enemies and might eat them. So if they keep food away from orcas, that orca has a chance of starving and not hunting them anymore. But they've encountered them enough to know that. We humans aren't in the ocean enough in order for them to register as us in the food chain. But also, that implies that dolphins are good and sharks are evil. And my personal stance on it is dolphins are ocean Satan, but argument for another time. But the
Yeah.
concept of good and evil doesn't exist in the ocean. And most of the time, as we've said before, most of the time if you see a shark in the water, it's probably going to leave you alone. Like, you'd be amazed how much they ignore you. And
Yeah.
people, we're obsessed with ourselves. So we see a shark, we think Jaws. We think Jaws, oh my God, it's coming to get me. Oh, there's a dolphin. Dolphin's going to come save me. I was like, that's not how it goes.
Yeah. Which it's so strange that like that's such a common thing in culture, and as soon as you think about like why would a dolphin risk its life to save you, like it sounds so ridiculous.
I think it's more a case of the dolphin wanting to play with you
Mm.
rather than you trying to protect you from a shark. Because that implies the shark is coming after you, and 9 times out of 10, the shark isn't. Probably doesn't even
Yeah.
care that you're there.
I guess if I can ask a sort of unrelated question, I was wondering, um, what animal would you most like to see in the wild, or what's your favorite, or what's your ideal wildlife trip, like the dream?
So, what animal would I like to see in the wild? A weasel. I'm kidding. No, sharks. More the sharks. But my ideal trip, Funny enough, I've got two in mind. One would actually be, so I don't know if you guys have checked out some of the guys that I put in the chat. Thomas, you know about the Malibu artist, but there's
Mm.
also this guy I follow on Instagram called Scott Fairchild. I've shouted him out a number of times. But to go to where they film some of those young sharks and kind of study some of their behavior, because one of these days, once my job isn't as busy or as hectic as it is, I want to get to the point to where I've got enough influence to test something out in the realm of shark intelligence. Swimming with some of those young sharks, jumping in the water with them, and having two objects, neither of them being food, but just two particular objects that could be shapes or just weird looking objects the shark is unfamiliar with. Having them in the water and seeing what the shark investigates first and watch their behavior. Because they are curious animals. They're curious about everything. And I want to see what their behaviors are. Because a lot of people don't assume sharks are smart, but they are. So I want to see what's a shark going to do when presented with foreign objects. And usually they're very curious about them. How does it decipher what this object is? Like, they've shown clips of sharks just messing with a piece of cardboard. To us, it's just a box. But a shark doesn't know what a piece of cardboard is, so it keeps messing with it. So stuff like that. And then the other one is the mangroves with the baby lemon sharks. I definitely want to visit that at some point. And kind of just sit in the mangroves while the sharks swimming around me and kind of just observe and see what they do. See if I can pick out their different personalities, start naming them, stuff like that.
Sounds
Very cool.
nice.
What about
Yeah.
you two?
I think for a while, Sri Lanka was really high on both of our lists because there are like these really cool dives you can do around Sri Lanka, and there's some really cool like wildlife on the island as well. But I couldn't ever narrow it down to anything because like there's also the polar bear trips you can do in the north, and there's well, we have been on a few really cool trips. Like we went to, you mentioned this in a video once, Thomas, that we went to Iriomote to look for the Iriomote cat.
Mm.
So it's like I've done some cool things like that, and I want to continue just going to obscure places to find obscure things. Like I'd love to see a snow leopard, which obviously everyone would love to see a snow leopard, and only like one person is ever gonna get to see one. So
Well, that's
uh,
because those guys they're kings at camouflage. Like, it'll be standing right in front of you. You'll never know it.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
more realistically, maybe I'd like to do a tiger safari, um, at a reserve. That could be really cool. I don't know. There are lots of things I'd like to see. What about you, Thomas?
Got to start knocking
Yeah,
that list out.
it's so hard to narrow down. There's so many animals I want to see in the wild. Like everything you said, tigers, the polar bear and the polar bears that you can go and see in Canada, lions in like Kenya or South Africa, going to see saltwater crocodiles in Australia or India. I don't know if there's like any wildlife trip to see an animal that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Um,
You
the
really liked
most
that trip
likely,
to see the spiders, didn't you?
yeah, that was a very good trip. We
A
went to
trip to see
see,
spiders.
yeah, migrating tarantulas in southern Colorado.
Really? I didn't know you could take a
Yeah,
trip to go see that.
He
yeah,
made
it
a
was
little
basically,
short video about it.
yeah, it's on the shorts channel that never really
Oh
went anywhere,
man,
but
I gotta go check that out.
It's really cute footage, really good. Because we saw the spiders up close. We're able to film them.
yeah, we saw like 17 tarantulas or something,
Holy smokes!
and I really like
And
tarantulas, so that was cool.
as far as like just traveling places and seeing new animals, I'm sort of excited about a fellowship I applied for, which there's like a 1% chance I get it, so I don't know. But it
It's
would
not
be to
zero.
study. Hmm?
It's not zero.
Right. It would be to study bonobos in the Congo. And like the
Wow.
whole job is basically you're not just studying the bonobos, you're studying their whole habitat and every animal in that habitat. So that would be like, all these different animals that you would get to encounter for the first time. That would be really cool.
Very nice. Charles Darwin type. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Great apes would be so cool as well, just to observe them. See what they
Yes,
do.
there isn't that many of them, but no, the great apes would be cool, definitely to see.
How do you come up with ideas for your videos? How do you decide what new shark research or shark topic to go make a video on?
It can be a multitude of things. Some ideas, because like I have a list of ideas that like, hey, eventually I want to cover this topic at some point. But sometimes new studies come out that are like, okay, I need to cover this. Like I actually have a few upcoming videos right now. Like for example, the lineages of the white sharks. I stumbled upon that one. I was just like, okay, I need to cover this because, well, it looked interesting at first, and then I read it. I was like, okay, I need to do a video on this because this could be good, but also really bad if these implications are correct.
Right.
But
Yeah.
as I've said, I got a video in the works for cat sharks and dogfish. I have one for sexual dimorphism in sharks and why it exists. And then I already told you about the short stories about the different sharks that I've made. And then one I actually wanted to ask you and eventually Truth is Scarier Than Fiction about. So I've already said for my Shark Cryptids Part 3, I'm going to be diving into the different megalodon encounters. And actually, let me see if I can find the one link. I found the link that covers a lot of the instances on the Shark Cryptid iceberg, talking about the different megalodon encounters. And I was more so going to start dissecting them. But I was also thinking, since you and Truth are the main, since you guys are like the big cryptid experts as far as I'm concerned, if you ask me,
I'm
we
definitely
could
not
do
an
like a
expert.
three-way collab and be like, hey, let's squish these megalodon stories. I gotta find where it is. I'll send it to you. It's a very,
Yeah.
very long article, but it covers a lot of the ones that were on the Shark Cryptid iceberg. But I always thought that could be a cool little collab between the three of us.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, those are a lot of the
That's
shark ideas I've currently got cooking up. I've got a few more, but those are the main ones.
pretty cool. I do think you and I are overdue for collaborating on some kind of a shark video.
I agree, definitely.
Yeah. Can I ask? I think you once said, in fact, I think this might be a title of one of your videos, that there's no good shark movie.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that's because of the way they portray the sharks. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think they always have to be monsters in movies? And you think it's possible to make a good shark movie?
I absolutely do think that it is possible because going back to my shark stories, and once I start uploading some of those, you'll see it'll be like, hey, it's possible to show a shark in a good light. But to make a long story short, as far as why there aren't any good ones, is because people are unoriginal. Jaws was the
Yeah.
biggest movie of its life. It made more money than God, as far as people were concerned, and people want to replicate that. And because Jaws has been so stuck in people's minds, nobody has, as what I'm trying to do on my channel, put another option on the table of how to look at sharks. And that's kind of like why I wanted to start showing these short stories of the sharks that I've made up, but also the main, the blue shark with the black stripes that I always show on my logo.
Mm-hmm.
That shark's name is Teeth, and I've kind of got a story cooking up for him to kind of show like, hey, here's a story of a shark trying to survive in the ocean. Not some mindless killer, but it's also not some silly person like Baby Shark, which funny enough, I actually hate that song. If someone starts singing Baby Shark, I want to kill a baby squirrel.
I think everyone hates that song.
Yeah, I vehemently hate that song. But back to the point. Just showing a story of a competent, well-written shark trying to survive in the ocean. Because I think both you'll agree with me when we're sorely lacking in well-written characters of not just animals, but just characters in general these days, as far as stuff goes.
There's a lot of copying and pasting, it seems.
I agree. There
Yeah.
aren't that many well-written characters. At least not like we used to have them, if you ask me. But that's a rant for another time. But no, I think it's mainly because people are unoriginal. And I just think people haven't really like delved into how to write sharks. So that's kind of like how I want to do it.
Cool. I have a question I probably should have asked you right away, but why is your name Sharktoz? What's the toes about?
So it's kind of a silly reason. I was like trying to. So when I was in high school, me and my friends, we were drawing all these different characters and stuff. And
Hmm.
I had this really cool character who was supposed to be like a humanoid shark. And I was trying to come up with the name of it. And I was writing down different names. My friend said, "What about this one, Sharktoz?" I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. And then that was around the time I started the DeviantArt, and I had to come up with a name. So I said, screw it, we'll go with Sharktoz. And then,
Cool.
funny enough, I don't know if any of you have played Pokemon, but I named my Sharpedo Sharktoz, and then after that, I kind of just stuck with it. So literally, it's just because it was a name my friend showed me in high school,
Nice.
and it's one that you
Is
can't
it?
really like. Hey, nobody else has this name. If somebody does, I'm gonna call hacks.
Yeah, that's good. It's hard to have an original name like online, but you got one.
You don't have
That's
an
pretty
original
cool.
name, Thomas.
I know there's not only do I not have an original name, there's like multiple other wildlife channels called Wild World. So
I know. And there's a Wild World podcast too. And it's like with a professional
you're a
guy.
professional.
Not as much as he is.
So let me
We'll
ask
get
you,
there.
how did you two end up meeting? I did want to ask that because because from what I know, you guys are on different sides of the world.
Yeah. Well, we were both working in the same place when we met. We were both living in Japan, working and living in Japan.
Lucky.
So that's where we met. And I guess this is what he said. I don't know if he's gonna correct this, but he said as soon as he started talking to me, he was like, "She'd be so cool to make a wildlife podcast with." So, is that not true?
Yeah, we were on like a work retreat hike thing, and we were like walking down a mountain, and I guess it was the first time we ever talked, maybe. Or no, it was like the second time we ever talked. And I don't know, we just started talking about wildlife. I was kind of like, this might be a podcast one day.
And
Yeah.
look at things now.
Yeah.
We
And now
have
we
a
Interesting.
have
Very
a
wildly
interesting.
small.
successful podcast.
So I'm gonna have to ask this: do either of you watch anime?
Little bit.
Sometimes. I'm not like an anime fan. I would not describe myself that way.
That's fair. I do watch anime, but there are people on the internet are weird. I'll put it that way. Like I like watching some animes, but there are some that are just like, no, this doesn't do it for me.
There are a lot
There's,
of there's an anime for everything, so
Yes, and sometimes that shouldn't be the case. We'll leave it at that. But no, I find you say Japan funny enough because I know I mentioned to you earlier, Thomas, my job. I can't exactly say what it is, but I'll just say military. So not next year, but maybe actually maybe late next year, I might get sent to either Japan or South Korea. So we'll see how that turns out.
oh wow.
That's a big reason as to why I don't show my face, just because of my particular job.
okay. Well, then we have a lot of good wildlife trips to recommend you if you ever end up in Japan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Hopefully, I'll get to see my favorite shark if I do end up going to Japan. And the little hint there.
Hmm.
But the main shark that so the shark I told you about, teeth, the blue shark with the stripes. I kind of based him off my favorite shark. I'll give you that as a little bit of a hint. And see, now he's looking
Now
at
I'm
it.
gonna look at it. Very
But if you figure it out,
large.
don't say it out loud because I want to keep it a
Okay.
secret for right now.
All right.
But
I'll just be
you
quiet
can
just in case I accidentally guess.
yeah, just message it to me. Be like, hey, is it this shark? Because some have already guessed it, and I've told them it's like, hey, look, keep quiet about it. But yes, that is my favorite.
Are we allowed to know the reason why to keep quiet about it, or is that a secret too?
So it involves. So I told you earlier about writing the story about teeth. It
Yeah.
will involve
Oh, because
that
we don't know what species he is, right?
exactly.
That's part of the story. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, and he's not exactly like the species that my favorite shark is, but it involves it, and it'll when the moment comes in the story, you'll know.
Anticipation.
Yes.
Well, I was wondering if there is something you can share about like just anything cool or interesting from your area of expertise that you would like to share with the audience, with everyone, with us.
As far as sharks go,
Yeah, like whatever, something that most people don't know, maybe something you think about a lot. Just, yeah.
Two of the most slept on species of sharks are hammerheads and sand tigers. Hammerheads, because I've said this before, but from an evolutionary standpoint, they're technically the youngest species. So as time goes on, we might see more and more sharks that look like hammerheads. They also, like as far as sharks go, them and makos have the largest brains. No,
Hmm.
sharks don't have small brains by any means, but out of them, they have the largest of them.
Is that why they have to have those
Oh.
bulging out so they have more room for brains in there?
Oh no,
Oh.
that's more for like directional purposes and stuff like that. The cephalofoil. There's a multitude of reasons as to why it evolved that way. The brain isn't one of them, but I think they are severely slept on, and you can see the diversity of them. Like one of the species, I think it's the bonnethead. One of them is an omnivore.
Yeah, it eats
And it's just, I think they
seagrass,
are.
right?
Do we know?
It eats seagrass sometimes, right? Is that?
Yeah, they were. Some scientists were watching like some of them. They like put them in this little area, and they were like observing it, and 60% of its diet was the seagrass. Now that may have been just like, hey, that particular one just happened to be like that way and just that much of a case. But
Mm.
it has been shown that they are a bit of an omnivore. And even great whites, sometimes they're shown when they're swimming in seagrass, they'll sometimes take a bite out of seagrass because they're trying to figure out what it is. So maybe by accident, but who knows?
Yeah.
And then sand tiger sharks, because we've established that sharks don't need air. But sand tiger sharks, by some way, figured out how to use air and just hold it in their stomach so they can just float. Because that's how they hunt. At nighttime, they'll just, instead of having to beat their tails or swim, they'll just float silently and they can sneak up on their prey. So the thing I always wondered is, how did they learn to do that as a technique? Because that's not something that just came out of nowhere. How did they figure out how to
Yeah.
do it? And how to get passed on to so many other members of their species? And then they whip their tails to sometimes herd fish into a frenzy, very much like thresher sharks. Now, their tails aren't as long as threshers, but again, how did they learn that? Why did they learn that? So I think those are two species that are very, very slept on, that I think we're going to get some more interesting stuff out of them as time goes on.
Very cool.
Interesting.
What other questions do you have? We talked a bit about your DeviantArt. Do you remember how you got into drawing, or is that something you just always been into?
I was always drawing as a kid. Like, in my room, I literally have this big black case full of just drawings from way back when. I still draw on my drawing pad like I just did before. It's just something I've always did. It's just because I always had all these different and weird ideas in my head of different sharks. So I figured, let me just draw them.
Fair enough.
Excuse me. And now that I'm getting a little older, I'll be 32 in December. Now that I'm getting a little older, I'm just like, let me attach short stories into them. And a big inspiration is SCPs. Again, I think you'll get a real kick out of them, Thomas.
Yeah, I think so too.
Do any of you draw?
I don't.
Not really. Okay, how about, do you have any, or sorry, did you want to ask?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I do have a question because you were saying,
Yes.
I mean, we know that sharks are your favorite animal, but often you can make a distinction between your favorite animal and the animal you most identify with. Do you think that there's a distinction like that for you, or is shark, like, do you identify with sharks a lot?
There's a particular shark that I know I definitely identify with because I'm the guy I can socialize with people. Generally, most folks are like, oh, you're pretty squared away. But generally speaking, if I'm being honest, I don't like a lot of people. I'm a guy who, like, I can socialize with folks, but if I have a Saturday afternoon to myself with nothing to do, I'm perfectly fine. And there's some times where there's just sometimes where I just don't want to deal with people, like with hotels. There's times like when I'm staying at a hotel and I have to leave, I don't even go to the front desk. I just leave. Just like, man, I just don't feel like dealing with people with that. But there's some cool folks who I do like to socialize with, like you folks, for example.
God.
But generally, for most folks, it's just like it's painful to deal with them because it's just like lady? Why did you decide to pick something to eat when you got to the front of the thing? Why didn't you decide while you were in line?
So, do
Yeah.
you think that sharks are the animal you most identify with, or is there another animal that you feel really attuned with?
It would definitely be sharks if you ask me.
Okay.
What about you two?
I'm like a mixture of a fox, a cat, and a rodent.
Hello?
Whatever. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
You
you.
cut out for me there.
Oh, well.
Sorry.
Whatever you take away from that, I'm a mixture of a fox, a cat, and a rodent. I just like rodents are all sneaky and like running around and hiding and being
So you're
cute.
a meerkat.
Um, no. I mean, maybe. I don't really identify with meerkats in the same way for some reason.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I don't like to stand. Meerkats are always standing, and I hate standing. Cats, like, they like to curl up in a box, you know? I find that more relatable.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What about you, Thomas?
It's kind of hard to say. I feel
Thomas
like I
is
get
such
all.
a golden retriever.
Maybe. But then I think a golden retriever is like really social. I feel like I'm not that social.
Oh, true.
See, Thomas gets it. You see somebody who's
Yeah.
like, I can be social, but it's like, yeah, do I have to?
He's like a
Yeah.
some other dog then that is less social but is still really nice.
Shiba, maybe.
Yeah.
Sheba could be.
Shivas get very easily annoyed, and I feel like you do too sometimes.
Yeah, probably. So I guess we kind of talked about the shark movies, but we have the question: do you have any favorite wildlife slash cryptid media or in media like songs or TV, etc.
Hmm.
Or video games.
or anime?
Yeah.
That
If there
involve
even is
wildlife or
wildlife anime.
cryptids.
Wildlife or
Like,
cryptids.
So if you ask me the best video game, I don't know if you guys play video games, but if you ever do a playthrough of Absu. Like you say you were gonna do reacts at some point. If you can at some point manage this, whether it's on PC or whatever gaming system you have, do a playthrough of Abzu. If you do nothing else, that if you ask me is still my all-time favorite game, and I don't want to spoil why, but I use a lot of the footage of it in my videos as you've seen, but definitely give that one a look. Abzu. That game is peak, if you ask me. As far as other things, not a lot when it comes to animals, really, as far as that goes. I'd
Because I
say
feel
if
like
there was, I'd say SCPs because I've been watching a lot of them,
mm,
but mostly for story writing ideas and how kind of like how some of their stories are told. But yeah,
cool.
that's really where it is for me. What about you guys?
well, sorry, I was just gonna say that there are like a whole bunch of wildlife movies out there. It's a whole genre. It's like a subgenre of the monster genre, but with real animals. And Thomas and I are both very interested in that. We're always watching just random movies that feature animals in some way. So, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're documentaries about the animals, or they're like
No,
Stuart Little or Babe.
they're
They're
fictional.
like Jaws, but with a tiger or a
An
bear or a
alligator, a
Oh,
alligator.
spider.
like raisin stripes and stuff.
No.
Uh,
Like, like,
Oh, like
the animal is
documentaries.
scary.
Oh, like they're scary.
Yeah. Or the animal is
Oh,
like, there's something interesting about the animal. It's not like a fun family movie about uh having a
oh.
pet zebra. It's like the
So,
animal is the plot, basically.
okay, yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about. I see what you're saying. Yeah, those are also pretty good as well. Uh,
Good as
there's just there
good as
used to be a
generous.
lot of them on Animal Planet and Discovery Channel back in the day, but both of them have just gone down the drain. I used to really
yeah.
enjoy stories like that where it's just like it's just the narrator just telling the story about the animal. Kind of like what is it? Prehistoric Planet, I think, is the newest one by
Oh
Apple.
yeah, we watched
Hmm.
Prehistoric Planet.
I need to watch it. I've heard nothing but great things about it.
It's good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I don't think I loved it as much as some other people, though.
It made me tired. I was very sleepy every time I watched it. I don't know why, but I
I
liked
get it.
it.
Yeah.
A another YouTuber that you might like, Thomas. This guy by the name of Bugs and Biology. He actually did a video
I
where he
think I know
tackled.
him actually.
Really? He did a video
Well,
on
not
Megalodon.
yeah.
Where he did a video on Megalodon versus Leviathan. His video was basically like chef's kiss on the topic of Megalodon and Leviathan. Definitely. He's like, his take was basically my take. Like I was very impressed by his video.
Yeah,
And who knows, maybe you guys can get him on the podcast.
Yeah, we're
maybe,
hoping to get a bunch of different people on the podcast in the future. So.
Do you have any other recommended guests we should try and get?
Overseer, I know you've seen his stuff. I don't know if you know what platforms he's on, but I talked to him on Instagram. Let me see.
Yeah, I think
who
I know
else.
him through you actually.
Okay, and then White Shark Videos would be somebody. Christina Zanato, who's also on Instagram. While I haven't like physically spoken to her, I've sent her a few messages on Instagram and she's replied to a few of them. Highly recommend her for shark stuff. I think you would get a lot out of her stuff, Mika. I think you would really like her, Christina Zanato.
Really?
Yeah, she's the one who like pulled the hook out of the shark's mouth and like pets them. They like sit in her lap.
Okay.
Yes, I think you would really, really like her. And then obviously, I know you got Calvin lined up. Him
Yeah,
with his humanity jokes.
He has so many jokes I don't understand. I feel like it's gonna be.
Did you know that he's like 20?
Really?
He's still in. Wasn't he just? I guess recently graduated high school or something. I don't know.
Yeah, he just
Or
recently
still in
graduated. I
high school.
didn't know that. I was just like, oh man, I
Oh.
didn't realize you were that young. But he's smart.
He is.
The guy's smart. I know he's working
He
on the Big
knows.
Moses video.
Yeah,
I
he's
feel
got
bad
like.
that we like released a video refuting his ranking. We're like bullying a high schooler.
Well, I think we made it obvious. Like, this is our list. His list is way better and is actually based on something. But yeah, like if the amount of stuff he knows now, like if he becomes a paleontologist or I don't know what he wants to do. You can just imagine the amount of knowledge he's gonna have in like 10 years.
And he's a really, really, really smart kid.
Yeah. Like he can be like when I'm listening to his podcast, he'll be like oh, it reminds me of this book I read on I think chapter 12 page whatever this paragraph or
Yes.
this it's like how the heck does he remember that?
Exactly. I'm just like, bro, how did you remember that stuff? Speaking of books, I actually did have one that if you want to look more into like shark stuff, that's fairly recent, Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can share my screen. If you're looking for a good shark book, this is one that I'm currently reading, and I'm gonna do a second read through of it. But this one right here, by this gentleman.
Sharkpedia. Daniel Abel. Full pocket-sized A-to-Z treasure. Cool.
And then he
Is it
actually
like
you what now?
so? Is that like it goes over like every species kind of thing?
Not every species, but the way he talks about sharks, he goes over a lot of like separate facts about them and some clarifications on them. Like the word elasma bronchi, or like, hey, look, here's how sharks evolved certain things, countershades, a lot of new data. He goes over like how he goes over shark behavior, his observations of a lot of things, and like the American Elasma Bronchi Society, which I didn't know was a thing. But it's a very, very knowledgeable book. Very, very fascinating. And then he has another one, if it hasn't. You guys, he has other books. Where is it? It's the I think it's called The Life of Sharks. Wait, I got it right here on my desk. This one right here. This is another one. After I finish this book, this is the next one of his I'm going to read. I've got them both here on my desk.
Cool.
Highly, highly recommend.
Yeah, I gotta read some more shark books. I feel like that's most of the questions.
Yeah, that's everything I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of fun talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us. I don't think we have any other questions, so I guess we could sort of wrap it up there if that's okay with you.
Hey, I was happy to be here. It was fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
being our
thank
first
you.
guest.
Happy to do
And
so.
thanks for standing up for sharks and making good, accurate shark content.
Hey, you too, man. Looking forward to the next video.
Yeah, same for you.
Yeah, I'll send you some of those SCPs because I think you'll get a kick out of those.
Yeah, definitely do. Yeah, I'd like to check them out. All right, well, I guess we'll leave it at that. Thanks for being here.